the Catholic Men's Podcast, helping you find good works of literature for the Catholic gentleman. The Mezzotint by M.R. James. Mezzotint. Definition: a print made from an engraved copper or steel plate for the reproduction of paintings. Before we begin the story, I'd just like to say I've had many people ask me for podcasts that will set their spine a shiver. That's not exactly what I'm going for in my endeavors, but I'm happy to oblige. Everybody needs a good campfire story to tell the kids. Any cultured gentleman should have 100-some-odd engaging stories in his head with a variety of genres. I like spine-chilling stories that are well-written and make you think, discreet in their meanings, and thus more tasteful. I stumbled upon M.R. James through my fencing instructor, Mr. Rourke Mitzel. The fascinating thing about this author is that he was an archaeologist in England and discovered the buried bodies of 2 abbots in Bury St. Edmunds by following cryptic passages in monastery labyrinths. All of his stories have an element in them that's historical and is closer to real life than anything you'll read in the idiotic horror novels of today. I made the mistake of listening to this story, The Mezzotint, in the pitch black of night after I had zipped up my sleeping bag. I pressed play on the audiobook, looked up into the darkness, and could almost see all the characters going about in my imagination. It's very smartly written, and is, I think, well worth your time. This is The Mezzotint by M.R. James. It was in February when the catalogue from the art dealer, J.W. Britnell, appeared on the desk of my friend Williams. Accompanying it was a typewritten communication which ran as follows: Dear Sir, we beg to call your attention to number 978 in our accompanying catalogue, which we shall be glad to send on approval. Yours faithfully, J.W. Britnell. To turn to number 978 in the catalogue was the work of a moment, and he found the following entry: 978, unknown. Interesting Mezzotint. View of a manor-house, early part of the century. 15 by 10 inches, black frame, 2 guineas. It was not especially exciting and the pricing high. However, Mr. Williams wrote a postcard asking for the article to be sent on approval, along with some other engravings and sketches which appeared in the same catalogue. A parcel of any kind always arrives a day later than you expect it, and the Mezzotint was delivered to his rooms in college by the afternoon post of Saturday. It was here that he found it when he came in to tea with his friend, Professor Binks. The Mezzotint, in a large black frame, turned out to be rather indifferent. It presented a full-face view of a not very large manor-house of the last century, with 3 rows of plain-sashed windows, with rusticated masonry about them, a parapet with balls or vases at the angles, and a small portico in the center. On either side were trees, and in front, a considerable expanse of lawn. The legend, AWF, sculpts it, was engraved on the narrow margin, and on the back was a paper label, the left hand of which had been torn off. All that remained were the ends of 2 lines of writing. The first was illegible, Somethingly Hall, the second, Essex. It was now that the friend, Professor Binks, took up the framed engraving and said, "What's this place, Williams?" "Just what I'm going to try to find out," said Williams, going to the shelf for a gazetteer. "Look at the back, Somethingly Hall, either in Sussex or Essex. Half the name's gone, you see. I can't conceive why Britnell should want 2 guineas for such a wretched engraving. There aren't even any figures to give it life." "It's not so badly done," said Binks. "The moonlight seems rather good to me, and I should have thought there were figures, or at least one figure, just on the edge in front." And indeed there was, hardly more than a black blot on the extreme edge of the engraving, the head of a man or woman, a good deal muffled up, the back turned to the spectator, and looking towards the house. Williams had not noticed it before. Later that evening, after dinner and an hour in the common room, Williams and a few of his colleagues retired to their rooms, and, during a lull, Williams picked up the Mezzotint from the table without looking at it and handed it to one of them. The gentleman took it carelessly, looked at it, then said in a tone of some interest, "It's really a very good piece of work, Williams. It has quite a feeling of the Romantic period. The light is admirably managed, it seems to me, and the figure, though it's rather too grotesque, is somehow very impressive." Yes, isn't it?" said Williams, who was just then busy giving whiskey and soda to others of the company, and was unable to come across the room to look at the view again. It was by this time rather late in the evening, and the visitors were on the move. After they went, Williams was obliged to write a letter or two and clear up some odd bits of work. So it was not until some time past midnight that on lighting his bedroom candle, the picture again caught his eye. It was face upwards on the table, and what Williams saw made him very nearly drop the candle on the floor. In the middle of the lawn in front of the unknown house, there was a figure, where no figure had been at 5 that afternoon. It was creeping towards the house, and it was muffled in a strange black garment, a sort of cloak. I don't know what is the ideal course to pursue in a situation of this kind. I can only tell you what Mr. Williams did, which was to lock it up in a drawer, but not before he had written out and signed an account of the extraordinary change which the picture had undergone since it had come into his possession. By now, in need of a further witness, he decided to invite his neighbor, Nisbet, to breakfast on the following day. Nisbet arrived around 9:30, and during the meal nothing was said about the Mezzotint, save that he had a picture on which he wished Nisbet's opinion. But at last the moment arrived for which he had awaited with considerable excitement. He unlocked the drawer and placed the picture face downwards into Nisbet's hands. "Now," he said, "Nisbet, I want you to tell me exactly what you see in that picture. Describe it, if you don't mind, rather minutely. I'll tell you why afterwards." "Well," said Nisbet, "I have here a view of a country house, English, I presume, by moonlight." "Moonlight? You're sure of that?" "Certainly. The moon appears to be on the wane, if you wish for details, and there are no clouds in the sky." "All right, go on, but I'll swear," added Williams in an aside, "there was no moon when I saw it first." "Well, there's not much more to be said," Nisbet continued. "The house has 1, 2, 3 rows of windows, 5 in each row, except at the bottom, when there's a porch instead of a middle one, and—" "But what about figures?" said Williams with marked interest. "There aren't any," said Nisbet. "But—" "What? No figure on the grass in front?" "Not a thing." "You'll swear to that?" "Certainly I will. But there's just one other thing." "What?" "Why, one of the windows on the ground floor, left of the door, is open." "Is it really?" "He must have got in," said Williams, with great excitement. It was quite true. There was no figure, and there was the open window. Williams, after a moment of speechless surprise, went to the writing table and scribbled for a short time. Then he brought 2 papers to Nisbet, and asked him first to sign one, it was his own description of the picture, and then to read the other, which was William's statement, written the night before. "It looks," said Nisbet, "as if we were assisting at the working out of a tragedy somewhere. The question is, has it happened already, or is it going to come off?" "I must get the thing photographed before it goes further," said Williams, "and I'll go and fetch Garwood, who saw it last night, and get him to sign a statement that the figure, when he saw it, hadn't got far across the lawn. And I must show it to old Green. It's quite likely he'll know the place. You know, I'm beginning to think that 2 guineas is not a very exorbitant price for it now." After obtaining the necessary equipment, Nisbet proceeded to photograph the picture. "Now what do you mean to do?" he said. "Are you going to sit and watch it all day?" "Well, no, I think not," said Williams. "I rather imagine we're meant to see the whole thing. Besides, I have a kind of idea that it wouldn't change much, if at all, in the daytime. We might go out for a walk this afternoon and come into tea, or whenever it gets dark. I shall leave it out on this table here and sport the door. My man Skip can get in, but no one else can." At 5 o'clock they returned to find William's Skip seated on a chair, gazing at the picture with undisguised horror. He was a servant of considerable standing, and nothing could have been more alien to his practice than to be found sitting in his master's chair. "Begging your pardon, sir, but it ain't a picture I should hang where my little girl could see it, sir. If she was to catch a sight of this skeleton here, or whatever it is carrying off the poor lad, she'd be in a taking and no mistake." And with these words, the excellent man went to continue on his rounds. You may be sure that the gentleman lost no time in gathering round the engraving. There was the house as before. The window that had been opened was shut, and the figure was once more on the lawn. But now it was erect and stepping swiftly with long strides towards the front of the picture. The black drapery hung down over its face, revealing only a glimpse of a white dome-like forehead and a few straggling hairs. The head was bent down, and the arms were tightly clasped over an object which one could suppose was a child. From 5 until 7, the three companions sat and watched the picture by turns, but it never changed, and eventually they agreed to leave it and to return again later. When they assembled again, the figure was gone, and the house was quiet under the moonbeams. There seemed nothing for it but to spend the evening over gazetteers and guidebooks. At 11:30 p.m., Williams read out the following lines from Murray's Guide to Essex. 16.5 miles, Anningley. The church has been an interesting building of Norman date, but was extensively classicized in the last century. It contains the tomb of the family of Francis, whose mansion, Anningley Hall, a solid Queen Anne house, stands immediately beyond the churchyard in a park of about 80 acres. The family is now extinct, the last heir having disappeared mysteriously in infancy in the year 1802. The father, Mr. Arthur Francis, was locally known as a talented amateur engraver in Mezzotint. After his son's disappearance, he lived in complete retirement at the Hall, and was found dead in his studio on the 3rd anniversary of the disaster, having just completed an engraving of the house, impressions of which are of considerable rarity. This looked like business, and, indeed, Mr. Green, on his return, at once identified the house as Anningley Hall. "Is there any kind of explanation for the figure, Green?" was the question which Williams naturally asked. "Oh, I don't know, I'm sure, Williams. What used to be said when I first knew the place was that old Francis was very much down on these poaching fellows, and whenever he got a chance he used to get a man whom he suspected of it turned off the estate, and by degrees he got rid of them all but one. Squires could do a lot of things then that they daren't think of now. Well, this man that was left was the last remains of a very old family. I believe they were the lords of the manor at one time. I recollect just the same thing in my own parish. Anyway, this man always kept just on the right side of the law, until one night the keepers found him at it in a wood right at the end of the estate. I could show you the place now. At Marsh's was some land that used to belong to an uncle of mine. Of course there was a row, as you can well imagine, and this man Gowdy was unlucky enough to shoot one of the keepers. Poor devil. He was strung up in double quick time, and I've been shown the place he was buried, on the north side of the church. And the idea, you see, was that some friend of Gowdy's must have planned to get hold of Francis's boy, and put an end to his line too. I must say it looks now as if old Gowdy had managed the job himself. I have only to add that the picture is now in the Ashleyan Museum, that it has been treated in vain to see if sympathetic ink has been used on it, and that, though carefully watched, it has never been known to change again. End of The Mezzotint by M.R. James. Thanks for listening, and Godspeed.